If I haven't had a chance to meet you yet, I am Brenda Langstrat. I have the honor of being the CEO of WITS, which means I get to support the great work of the entire WITS team, many of whom are here today. So WITS team, can you wave and we'll applaud you? You guys are looking fabulous. And they put together this series of WITS Talks this year that are just like really extraordinary and will help you better understand the students that you're working with in the WITS program and maybe the other children in your life too, right? So I want to say thank you to BP for hosting us, to Bea and Kim and Randy for everything that you guys do for WITS. You guys are awesome. Kim asked me to mention that there are no planned drills today, so if something should go off, we should actually move. So Kim, you'll tell us what to do, right? Okay. And you all, as the WITS volunteers, are part of a core of 1,500 volunteers, which is the largest core of volunteers who are mentoring our students in Chicago Public Schools. That is extraordinary. WITS was founded 27 years ago by two women who got to know a teacher who said, you know, we really need that one-on-one adult support in our classrooms, you know, with reading to our students. And 27 years later, 1,500 people. That's just, you know, extraordinary. So thank you for your commitment, thank you for what you do. The partnership that we have with BP goes above and beyond what many of our corporations do, so it's really, really cool. You guys do this with a lot of commitment, a lot of heart. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Ellen Werner, our program director, who will introduce our speaker today.
Thanks, everybody. We've had Michele come do a WITS Talk before, and we love her, and she has so many great credentials that I'm just going to read her bio. Michele Lansing, in addition to having a master's in education, is a licensed clinical social worker and industry leader with 10 years experience as an educator and mental health expert. Prior to moving to Chicago, she taught middle and high school in Brooklyn, New York, focusing on math, science, and sex education. Through her work as a public school teacher, Michele witnessed how many children are tied down by life's stressors and are unable to devote themselves to their education. From these experiences, she decided to make the transition into social work. Michele currently works for the Juvenile Protective Association, JPA, there's their logo, as a staff therapist and director of Connect, providing individual and couples therapy to parents, and providing expert consultation and training to teachers and administrators. She's also been instrumental in the development and implementation of multiple JPA programs, Connect to Kinder, and Test Anxiety program, which seek to support students, their families, and teachers in cultivating stronger and healthier relationships. Please welcome Michele Lansing.
Thank you so much. Woo. Yeah. So as mentioned, I am a school teacher by trade, and so this feels very new and different to me. So you'll have to excuse me as I get used to being mic'd up. And I've also been directed to try to stay in this region for filming purposes. Hi to those who are joining us via film, which will also be a challenge for me because I'm a school teacher who walks around a lot. So those are kind of the things we're facing today. Just like to start by naming what's in front of us. That's one of the things we're going to be talking about today. I'm really appreciative. Thank you to WITS, thank you to BP for hosting as well. I'm very excited to be back and talking with you guys today about strengthening relationships. It says with children, and just to note, a lot of the things we're going to be talking about might feel like that could work for an adult too, that could work for myself, and yes, I mean, we know that children are just little humans, and we are all humans, so the things we talk about today, I think, should be or feel really relatable to life in general. Okay, clicker. Oh, look how cool. This was already talked about. The one thing I'll add is if you, and I know this might feel a little bit harsh given what we have for lunch, but if you want to talk about what real pizza from New York tastes like, yeah, that's the plug I always do for New York. But yes, I spent time on both coasts. I'm happy to be here in the middle, kind of bringing the two worlds together. Okay, as a teacher, I can't just let you sit there. I have to get you engaged, and I recognize it is your lunchtime. So if you feel comfortable when I say go, but not yet, we are going to do our first activity. This is called Chalk Talk. It is an activity that can be adjusted depending on the content you want to fill in. My hope is that along with taking the content, you take some ideas of ways to engage, whether it be with children, could be your teams at work, just a way to have a conversation. Except we're going to have a silent conversation. So you will have 2 minutes to grab their markers on your table, and you'll notice behind you, ooh, I think there's a laser here. Ooh. You'll notice behind you, it's the closest I'm going to get to Vanna White. I guess I should do that. 4 different poster papers, each having their own word on them. What I would like you to do when I say go is to grab one of those markers and write what comes to mind for you when you read that word. It could be another word, it could be a phrase or a sentence. You might see somebody write something that you're like, oh, I was gonna write that too. You might wanna draw a star next to that, or a check mark, or like, yes, I agree. The challenge is that you have to remain entirely silent for the 2 minutes. Questions before we get started? Okay, your time starts now, go. Whenever we go to debrief an activity, something that's happened, there's 2 ways we can think about processing it. One is the process itself. What was the experience like? And then the second level can be content. So today, we're just gonna start with the process before we jump into the content. What was it like for you to have a silent conversation? Yeah.
What really bothered me was that people were lined up. I wanted to just tell people, well, there's a lot of parts of that sheet which is but I couldn't say that.
So getting clarification and direction became challenging. And I admire you that you didn't say anything, because you guys did a really good job. A lot of groups I do this in, I usually have to come on and say, and remember, this is a silent conversation. Other things you experienced about having a silent conversation, trying this activity?
I guess observing and also at the same time reflecting for me.
That in the quiet, there gives space both to speak and to hear, almost simultaneously. Right? That everyone's voices get heard, even though nobody's out loud saying anything. That's exactly. You weren't listening.
No, I found that I wasn't.
Say a little bit more about that. What do you mean you weren't listening?
I wasn't concentrated on what other people said. I mean, I saw it quickly, but that's my fault, let me point out.
No, you were. I hear you saying you were really able to focus on what you wanted to get across. You weren't distracted by others' messages, weren't convinced one way or another. You had your ideas, and the quiet gave you the space to have those ideas. And perhaps others, maybe free of judgment, free of influence. Right?
That's a positive way to look at it.
It's a little bit what social workers do, finding the positive. That's the idea of a silent conversation, just the different points that you all brought up, that it gives us equal footing to hear each other's voices. It also gives us some maybe focus of our own thoughts and opinions, gives us space to reflect on everybody else. And if we were to try to have this conversation, everybody go around and say one word for each thing, even if we only picked one, I don't know what's going on there, even if we just picked one poster paper to comment on, it would take us so much longer than a couple minutes. So this gives us a platform to get a lot of our ideas out there. So now let's look at some of these ideas. And I'm sorry, Eric, again. If we notice, mentor, friend, relationship, and teacher, those were the central terms used. But a lot of the terms that came up, a lot of the things that came to mind, we seem to have in common. Trust appeared on many of these. I see teacher and relationship on many as well. Empathic understanding I saw on a few as well. Mentor on a teacher, that there's a lot of overlap. That these terms have a lot in common, and yet a lot that's different. And discerning between them, especially if you're in the role of a mentor, the role of a teacher, possibly the role of a parent, figuring out where do they overlap and where they are separate. That's going to be a lot. That's gonna be a lot about what we're talking about today, is figuring out, are you a friend if you are a teacher? Are you a mentor in every relationship? Where does the line cross? Right? So let's start by thinking of someone in your life, a mentor you had. Doesn't have to be in a formal setting. Could be someone who, when you were a child, you really looked up to. It could be another adult that just took an interest in you, whether it's a teacher. It could be when you were a young professional, someone who kind of took you under their wing. As you think about these questions, I'm curious what comes to mind. You don't have to answer all of them, but just anyone feel comfortable sharing maybe one answer.
Good listener.
Good listener. Other qualities about this person?
Role model.
Role model.
Took time to know me.
Took time to know me. That's a big one.
Encouraging.
Encouraging.
Frank.
Start.
Frank is direct and he'll tell you always the
Direct.
truth.
So the question today of, okay, how can I be the best mentor? How can I be the best educative support? How can I be the best parent, if that's what brings you to the room? Sounds like you guys have already come up with your own answers, right? It's the same thing that made those individuals strong in your own relationships. It's the same words that you put on these papers. That's what we're building off of. So I think the answers are really amongst you. We know what it looks like. We know what it feels like. But putting it into words, coming up with a list, that part's a little harder. Luckily, I'm going to help with that today. So what we're going to look at are the factors that promote positive relationships, particularly with kids. We'll explore how this translates to work as mentors. I heard there's also some parents in the room, so we can look at that extension as well. How you can use these techniques to increase rapport, because theory is one thing, application is everything, right? Doesn't really help just to say, oh, the textbook said, or Michelle said I should do this. At the end of the day, you're the one sitting in the room with the kids and figuring out what's gonna work. Let's practice some of those. And then we'll troubleshoot challenging scenarios that may have arisen and things like that through a Q&A. All right, so we've kind of come up with our own, in a sense, rough sense of a list of what makes a positive relationship. It's in beautiful colors across those different posters. It was just shared through that popcorn answer, thinking about your own relationship. When we think of it from a research or more formal perspective, this is the list that we come up with. We're gonna go through this today. And some of the terms might feel very approachable, like, oh, I know what that is, and others might feel a little bit like I've never seen that before. They might feel more of a psych term. So we'll break them down. Unconditional positive regard. This essentially is, can you really accept someone, no matter what? Doesn't mean you're always okay with what they do, but can you accept them as a person? Okay, easy to say. If I could just say it, the whole world would do it. We'd probably be a much better place. So let's talk about the reality. What makes this difficult?
We are all different.
Yeah, we're all different. So why would that make a difference in me accepting who everybody is and what they do?
Different ideas.
We have different ideas, different perspectives. Do you always agree with everybody? Yeah. Right? So we're going to have conflict. Conflict is natural. We're going to disagree with people, especially with children who are still figuring themselves out. And so as we watch a child make what we feel is a mistake, whether it's because we have a different perspective, we come from a different background, a different experience, all we want to do is jump in and fix it. And it's natural to come with some judgment too. Oh my God, I can't believe you're choosing to go to that party instead of do your homework. Or I can't believe you're turning down that scholarship opportunity. I think this would be a really good thing for you. I can't believe you're not really being present in this moment while we're reading and you're too worried about what your friends said about their shoes, right? All those little moments. It is natural to feel like it is hard to hold someone in this unconditional, no matter what, positive regard. And again, to think about that person who meant a lot to you in your childhood that you thought of earlier, how they treated you, right? The way they spoke to you, the way they had kindness for you, that likely was a version of unconditional positive regard. And so I sometimes think of this as the goal to reach towards. Doesn't mean we hit it perfect every day. All right, attunement. This is the big one. Seems so simple, and yet you're gonna find is so complicated in practice. Attunement is essentially really getting a sense of what the other person is saying, thinking, feeling. Sometimes it feels a little bit like parroting, but it's a deeper understanding than just mimicking it back. So rather than just me tell you about it, figured we'd practice it, you would try it. So on your tables, you will see a white piece of paper with the JPA logo at the top with a few different scenarios. The goal is for you, whether it's independently or with your table mates, to find ways to make attuning statements to this. Let me give you some examples, because I don't want to send you out there without support. So often something like this comes up. Oh, I just can't stand my mom right now. She's always on my case. And what do we say? Your mom, she probably just trying to help you. Have you tried just doing what she says? Moms know so much. Trust me, when I was your age, I didn't want to do what my mom said, but man, now I wish I had listened to her, right? This like advice giving, let me tell you how to make it better. Let me save you from what you're about to experience because you can, gain from my mistakes, which is this really, really benevolent idea. And from the other person's perspective, it can feel a little like you're not hearing me. You're in your own world. So an attuned response to, I just can't stand my mom right now, she's always on my case, is, man, sounds like things are really rough at home right now. You're feeling micromanaged. Now, obviously that word we would adjust depending on the age of the kid we're working with. Maybe it's like, you feel like she's right on top of you, or right on your back. Or you feel like she's watching every little thing you do. And you're like, well, Michele, aren't you just restating what the person said? Yeah, we want to join them exactly where they are. If you're trying to get a kid, or any person, to another point, in fact, let's take this out of a child. You're trying to get me directions to your home. You're not going to start from where you are. If you're at your office and I'm at my office, you're not going to say, go out of the building, take a left, because that may be the wrong direction from my office. You have to figure out, well, where are you starting from, Michele? Give me the address, give me the cross streets. And from where you are, I'll direct you towards where I want you to go. So it is with relationships. We start with where the person is. So it might feel like I'm just parroting, mirroring it back. Great, go find them, figure out where they are. And once you meet them there, then we work towards moving towards where you think or hope that they to be. All right, try that on your own. You have a few examples in front of you. Feel free to talk to your neighbors and get some advice across the board. All right, so easier or more challenging than you thought? Also, those are the tables I visited. So it's really common, and what I kept hearing around the tables is to go straight for the solution, right? Why? Because, well, we know it. Who wouldn't want the solution? Let me just give you the answer. It's B, right? And just like we would never dream of writing a book report for a kid or taking a test for a kid, well, why not? You would get a better grade, right? Why don't we do that? They're not learning. So it is when we jump to the solution. When we say, your teacher's only on your case because they really care about you, yeah, you're right, that's the answer. And we're giving them the answer. Let's meet them so that they can do the work and do the learning. And part of that's providing the vocabulary. A colleague of mine says, feelings first, solutions second. Feelings first, solutions second. So in those moments, can you start by saying, it sounds like you feel blank. Or it seems like you feel blank. Sometimes you'll get a kid who will correct you. That's always fun. Sounds like you're really upset. No, I'm not upset. Okay, I wonder if you could tell me how you're feeling then. I'm really sad. Oh wow, you're really sad. Thank you for letting me know. Yeah, it is really hurtful when our friends make fun of us. It gets you to a better point. Now once you've gone there, they're more open to the solution. Questions, comments?
Too busy to provide both.
Such a good point.
I mean, sometimes you're in such a hurry because of life
Mhm.
that the first thing that comes to you is just automatic.
Totally.
And you move on to the next thing. I mean, I hate saying that, but.
It's the truth, right? This approach takes more time. So does teaching students additional vocabulary, helping them learn how to read, teaching them the knowledge. And that's why I think it's so natural just to want to give them the answer. I have a 19-month-old, and he has learned to walk and can walk pretty well. It does not walk as fast as I do. And so in the mornings, as we're trying to get out the door, a lot of times I just pick him up and take him because it's easier for me. Right? Expediency. And there's a time and a place to do that. And if I carried him everywhere all the time, he would never really learn. And so some mornings it's deciding, what's my priority? Do I need to be somewhere? Do I need to get through this curriculum? Is this super, super important? And when are the mornings when I have a minute to go, I need to help his development, a different type of development. And I may be rushing to get him off to preschool. He's gonna learn there. And this is an important learning tool too. And so how can we think of that with the students you mentor? The reading is so important. And when you thought about the person that you really cared about, I doubt, or you think about your favorite teacher, I doubt anybody is going to say, I love them because they use this curriculum. Oh, their textbook made me feel so warm. Right, we think about the relationship. That's how learning happens. And I really appreciate you pointing out, that's not easy. Okay? If it was, we'd all be doing it. Okay, so now that we've identified your mentee's feelings, empathy is about really meeting them and kind of going deeper into that. It goes really tightly with attunement, right? That feelings first idea. And we can take this too far. When we overly identify with another person's feelings, it can allow us to forget about what we're here to do, other expectations, limits, and those are important. So, for example, if I was hearing a mentee talk about how difficult it is for them to take all these buses to get to school and take a train, and maybe they're helping their siblings, would it be appropriate for me to oh, okay, well, I'm just gonna come and pick you up every day? No, it's taking it a little too far. Right? It's not my job, it's not my place, it's not also helping that student if I just go and do everything for them. Instead, can I notice, wow, that sounds really difficult. You put in so much energy to be here every day. That's a lot to be proud of. What might that teach them going forward? And also remember that your mentees are already there. They're doing it. They're living their lives. They don't need you to come in and save them, of course. They're very capable. You're there to just strengthen them, acknowledge it, and celebrate their wins along the way. Okay, listening activity. So, grab a script. What I'd like for you to do is you're in your tables, you're going to pass around a marker to the right when you hear the word right. You're gonna pass a marker to the left when you hear the word left. Simple enough. There should be about, for a table, maybe like 3 to 4 markers floating around. So not everyone needs to have a marker in their hand. Maybe some people are waiting. But about 3 to 4 markers. So we'll just practice. And you'll pass it around the circle. So if I say right, pass the marker to the right. So this table, would you mind just kind of sampling what we were just talking about, modeling for everyone else? Because I think my directions may not be super clear. So if you pass to the right, you'll see, go right, they pass the one to the right. Left, left. And some people don't have one, and that's okay. All right, so everybody try. Again, 3 to 4 markers per table. Pass to the right. Pass to the left. Cool. Okay. So remember, anytime you hear the word right, oh, this table got it. This table got it. Or left. There you go. There you go. Go past it. Ready? Everyone listening, remember it's a listening activity. This is the story of the Wright family. Last night, the Wright family went to see a basketball game between the Boston Red Sox and the Minnesota Twins. They left the house at 6 o'clock, right after the family finished dinner. Mr. Wright drove everyone to the game in the red family van, which is always parked on the left side of the garage. In the van were Mrs. Wright, Bobby Wright, Katie Wright, and Joey Wright. As they drove down the street, Mrs. Wright waved to Lisa, their neighbor, who lives 2 houses down on the left. She was watering her garden on the right side of the house. As the Wright family approached Fenway Park, Mr. Wright exclaimed, "I can't remember where I left the tickets." Joey Wright said, "Dad, I saw you put them in your right hand pocket." Mr. Wright checked, but they were not there. Katie said, "No, Dad, that isn't right. You left the tickets with me for safekeeping. I have them right here in my purse." "What a relief," said Mr. Wright as he turned left into the stadium parking lot. Joey almost left his baseball glove in the van, but when Mr. Wright was about to lock the doors, he remembered that he had left it under his seat. The Wright family had to wait in line for a bit, but finally they made it to their seats in left field. As they sat down, Mr. Wright looked to his left at the whole Wright family and smiled. He had made the right decision in getting tickets for this game. Okay, how do you feel like you guys did? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Let's see. Where were the Wrights going? Baseball game. Okay, so where was the baseball game? Who was playing? What time of day was the game?
7.
I said you were listening. 6 o'clock. Okay. How many Wright family members are there? 5. Let's name them. Mr. and Mrs. Wright, Katie, Joey, Bobby. Okay. So who almost forgot their baseball glove? Joey. Who had the tickets? Katie. So you were listening so closely. What was so difficult about answering those questions? Multitasking for themselves. Yes. But often we bring our own lens into conversation. In this case, I told you what your lens was. I said, listen for right and left. I was just said right. Listen for right and left. And that influenced what you were hearing. And so we do it with every conversation with every other person, especially with kids. We go in with either agenda in our mind or a certain filter on. And sometimes that means missing things. So when we talk about active listening, as much as possible, we want to try to adopt the speaker's point of view. What do we think might be important to them? How they might be feeling? That's where the empathy, the attunement really comes in. We want to clarify the speaker's thoughts and feelings. You guys already started practicing that. It seems like you're feeling this. sounds like you thought this, to make sure, are we hearing things correctly? So that reflective response technique that we practice with attunement, so it sounds like this. So you're struggling with this, you're frustrated about this, that feeling first, that comes into play. And then the other thing I want to point out here, which I keep saying, but I'm just going to reinforce one more time, is that it's not just the words, it's the feelings. That so often with children, what they say is incongruent with how they are presenting. No, I'm fine. You don't seem really fine in this moment. And so how can we help children become aware of how they're presenting and how they're communicating through other means? You know, I don't need help. I'm just gonna not do my work and bother other people. That's communicating that they do need help, that something's difficult. So how can we highlight those things as well? Questions or comments? So you started this relationship, you're using your attunement, you're having empathy, you're being a really active listener, you really dove into the relationship. Now that it's formed, often there's this feeling of reciprocity, of giving back and taking. You've become a person to them. You're not just the lady or the guy that shows up sometimes. You're an actual person. So at a certain point it goes, how far do you reciprocate? How much do you share? So, do you have to reciprocate equally in order to deepen your relationship? Thoughts? Sometimes, no, yes. Sometimes?
I think it helps establish trust, that you're sharing part of yourself with them too.
So, do you like this movie? Right? That might be a way to share a part of yourself. Hey, I also struggled with reading too when I was your age. Way to disclose a little bit about yourself that opens you up. And there's probably lines for that, right? It's one thing when a child says, do you like this book? What about, do you have kids? Is that over your line, or is that okay to ask? For you, it's okay. Some people feel comfortable talking about it. What did you do with your kids this weekend? Is that okay to share? Maybe.
Well, when you're talking to a student, you kind of don't want to, your time is so limited that you kind of don't want to talk about a lot of personal.
So the personal can feel like a distraction. And we know that building the relationship is important. Ooh, this tug of war for time. What about, would you let your kids have a phone at my age? No, I think we just found a line for most people. It's okay to have limits to reciprocity. Why? Because while mentor, friend, and teacher have a lot of overlap, they are distinct words. Will every teacher be your friend? No, nor do they need to be. Might you feel friendly with your students, with your mentors, with your own children? Yeah, you can feel friendly. Are you their friend?
No.
No. Yes, no. You have a different title, a different role. And finding those lines and limits, that's something that every person will have to do on their own, on an individual level. But being intentional about them, that's what I want you to invite you to do. So thinking for yourself, where is my line? What am I going to say when a kid comes up against my line? What happens when a kid has something that crosses the line? And how do we do it in a way that's not shameful or judgmental? And then we can go back to attunement. We start with the feeling. Starts with our perception of where they're at. It sounds like you really want to get to know me better. And then we go to the solution. And I appreciate that. And we're a little low on time. And I want to make sure we get through this activity, whatever we're here to do. You've heard me say this before, if you've heard me speak, the word and. Magical. But it's only 3 letters. I know you're sick, but I really need you to come in today. How does that leave you feeling? Dismissed, like it doesn't matter. I don't really care about you. What I need is more important. I know you're feeling really sick, and there's some things that we need to work on. How can we figure this out together? A little bit more acknowledging of how you're feeling. I know you're really interested in learning more about me, and we only have 5 minutes left, and we need to get through these things. Wonder if we can think about making more time, or if you want to write me some questions for next time. Starting with the feeling, solution first, and to connect them. Questions? Regulation. So even just asking a question of, would you let your kid use a phone at my age? There was a little bit of like, oh, some reactions. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of what kids can say and do. I have had children ask me everything under the sun and said some very provocative things. I've also had kids not listen to me, not follow the directions, call me names, call what I was trying to do with them, the help, the things I was trying to teach them, names. We're all human. You're gonna have your own feelings about that. We spent a bunch of time talking about their feelings, you're gonna have your own feelings about that, and that's okay. And in the moments when those feelings are activated, how do we stay calm and grounded? Because if you're calling in feeling sick, and my response is, oh my God, I don't know how are we gonna finish this work? How are we gonna finish this work? I don't think I can do this. It doesn't really leave space for how you're doing. It becomes all about me. And not that any of you would dream to have that kind of reaction with a child. It's very natural that when kids say provocative things, when they seem to be defiant in their presentation, when maybe some of the language feels a little disrespectful from our perspective, our culture, our experiences, that we get activated. So, how do we stay regulated? Specifically, how do you stay regulated? How do you stay calm when a kid, whether it's your own child or child you're working with, says something or does something that gets you feeling some kind of way?
Take a deep breath.
Yeah. That works because it brings oxygen to the frontal cortex from the reptilian portion of the brain. It actually breaks down the stress walls and allows you to use some of the thinking skills that you need to respond in a calm way instead of a agitated, worked up way. So yes, take a deep breath. Get a subcontractor. Yes, sometimes there are situations where it can be really helpful to say where our line is. Even when working with a mentee. You know, what you said to me is really hurtful, and I think I need to take a moment right now. What does that teach them? One, you have feelings. You should name feelings when you have them, and it's okay to take space as long as we're using our words. Other ways you stay regulated and calm, whether with kids or possibly even adults. I've heard don't take it personal. Right? It's not about you. But kids getting really defiant, really worked up, and you're thinking, I did nothing wrong, I'm just here to help them. Yeah, it's probably not about you. Probably about something they're carrying. And I'm here to also tell you to take it personally. Huh, what? You just told me not to. Here's what I mean by that. In stress and trauma, our brain is wired to do one of three things: fight, flight, or freeze. It's part of this portion of the brain that's referred to as the reptilian portion of the brain. If you think of a reptile, a lizard, it makes perfect sense, right? The lizard comes across a small bug, they can take it on, they're gonna fight it. If they come across a big animal that's slow, they're gonna run away. And if they come across an animal, a predator that's pretty fast, like a cat, they'll probably play dead to survive. Hope the cat loses interest. That's wired into our brain. That through evolution, that's still there. So kids do the same thing. People do the same thing. Fight, flight, or freeze. So if it's in a moment where a kid feels like a kid is picking a fight with you, what that tells me is that kid feels safe with you. Because the reptile does not pick a fight with a cat. We would not pick a fight with a tiger. If you faced a real threat, that you couldn't take, you wouldn't pick a fight. So that means they don't see you as a threat, they see you as someone who's safe. Feels a little counterintuitive, but if they're picking a fight with you, it's because they trust that you won't hurt them. And that is a real honor. Other question? Yeah.
I did have some things that I've noticed, like you say, is when with these examples, you've been using a lot of I statements, very important. And then also when you're having these challenging conversations, with the students, and maybe there's some behavior things that arise. It's not you're not attacking you. It's more of the behavior. You're trying to have conversations with your student about the behavior aspect.
Yeah.
So
the student and I are on the same team, and we have the same goal, which is they want to be happy, they want to be healthy, they want to learn. It's natural. And that this issue, the behavior, is the challenge we both face. That's exactly right. And it's separate from the individual. It goes back to the unconditional positive regard. That's what helps me stay regulated, is to remember this is a behavior, this is not the whole child. Thank you for adding that. Really good points. Okay, we're not going to be perfect though. You do all of these things and something still happens. You're going to let a kid down. You're going to let a kid down when you didn't even know you were letting a kid down. You promised me you were going to bring Kit Kats. I don't really remember promising that. No, remember last week when we talked about Kit Kats? Yeah, I remember saying that I like them. Why didn't you bring me any? And you're thinking, I really didn't, and all we want to do is defend, right? No, I didn't say that, I didn't. And again, we can go to where they are, how they're feeling. That you really feel let down by me. You felt like I was supposed to do something and I wasn't able to do it. That's got to be really difficult, right? But likely what they're doing is reenacting an experience not about you. It's not personal. It's personal in the sense of they feel safe going through it with you again. The good news is that the research shows that to repair these ruptures, you only need to be good enough. What does this mean? Winnicott had this idea of a good enough mother. We can extrapolate that to be all genders. That they found through research that parents who were able to meet enough of a baby's basic needs helped the development of the child. As a parent myself, I often feel like I have to be perfect. I try to remind myself, I don't need to be perfect. I just need to be good enough. I need to try my best, I need to have the best intention, and know that I will make mistakes, and that the child will still be okay. And this is true for teachers, for mentors, for all adult-child relationships. So while we want to be idealized in this perfect, kind of statuesque person in their life, I will never let you down, and I will always be here to help you, there will be ruptures. Do you guys have any fears or concerns or worries when you think of but what if? What if this kid gets upset? What happens when I let them down? That tells me you care. So as I said, we want to repair them. That's also what makes you very different. You are not just going to let a rupture occur and leave it and ignore it. So much of society does this, right? Ghosting, just disappearing. But instead really looking at how can we circle back to that? How can we learn from that? How can we make a repair in these situations? So some mentees are going to bounce back really quick. Some kids, as you say, oh, you were really disappointed that I didn't bring this. Oh, no, it's fine, it's all right. And they're just okay, they move on. And you were all prepared to do the big speech. I heard Michele say it. Wrote the note. I'm going to say this whole thing. I know you were really disappointed. I start with, oh, I know you were really disappointed. No, it's fine. But I had a speech prepared. Some kids just bounce back faster. Sometimes they'll say that, and you might feel like they're not okay in other ways. Where you're like, okay, let's take out your pencil. Why are you yelling at me? They just said that they were fine, but their behavior is communicating something else. Seems like you're still pretty upset. Sometimes it's the opposite. They just won't let it go, and we want to try and make it all better in that moment. And sometimes it's just about leaving it as not okay. And that you can be a person who will still show up for that kid, even if they are angry with you. Even if you disagree about something. Actually, maybe even especially when there's a rupture. That's the unconditional positive regard. We don't have to be besties for me to show up. That's also possibly the difference between, right, a teacher, a mentor, and maybe a friend. Maybe friendships, there's more of that option, I'm just gonna step away. Although a true friend, I would say, probably, right, really, when the rubber hits the road, a true friend is there for you. That's the idea of a true friend. The reliable, the trust. So how can we just remain available even when the kid's upset and make everything all better and put a bow on it? And that can even look or sound like, I know you're really upset right now, and we still need to do this work. And if you want to talk about it more, I'm here. And I'll continue to see you next week, and I'll continue to be here. Thoughts or questions? So other general tips that I always like to throw out there, lead with curiosity. I wonder, it seems, those kinds of things. That leaves us open, allows the kids some space to talk with us. It's how we find commonality. Be explicit. Sometimes we assume, oh, it seems, of course they know this. This can go with just, I care. I enjoy spending time with you. When was the last time you said to your mentee, you know, I really appreciate you taking the time. This is something I very much enjoy. I like getting to know you more. Well, they know that. Do they? Kind of goes with don't assume. I think this was brought up earlier that there's differences. We all have differences. You're not going to look exactly like your mentee. You may or may not be the same gender. Maybe you are. Maybe you're like, oh no, we are the same. We almost look like little big versions of each other, and still your lives are different. Right? Even with two identical twins, lives are different. So instead of trying to defend against this, instead of trying to say, oh no, I know what that was like because I also had a mother or a sibling or this, or I had that experience too. Can we just sit back and listen, be curious, and wonder about their experience? People like talking about themselves, and that's true for children too. And if we give them an opportunity to do so, then we're more likely to feel connected. Consider the context, who they are, who you are, where you are, right? So how open they might feel to talking with you depends on how safe they feel in that space, which may have nothing to do with you. That you're different people, that they've had their own experiences and relationships, which may or may not look like the ones you thought about, what we talked about today, or what you put up on that board. And so if they've never had a relationship that looks like those things, how uncomfortable they might feel in a new relationship that has these hallmarks of trust and support and empathic understanding. That anytime we do something different, even if it's a positive difference, it can still be uncomfortable, and giving some space for that comfort. And finally, be patient and trust the process. So as I already spoke about how it takes a lot of time to do this, both in the moment, but also over time, frequency and duration. That building a relationship doesn't just happen overnight, that it's not going to happen after you go back after this workshop and try one or two of these things. New behavior takes 1,000 repetitions. And also, you probably feel like you've done things 1,000 times. It's amazing how it doesn't have to be big. It can be just a small one, done a lot. It can really change the experience and make that bond. And then finally, remembering that one size does not fit all. A coworker of mine said, people are like plants. We all need water, sunshine, and space, but you can't treat a cactus the same way you would a fern. Right? Kids are different. People are different, and that's okay. That's where we go back to the attunement. We start with where that person is at. Even if we're trying to get all our kids to the same spot, they're all starting in different locations. I know we just have a few minutes left. I wanted to leave it open in case there were questions, things like that. Also, just a quick plug in case somebody has a strict time limit of 1 o'clock. There are pink papers in the center of the table. I do ask that you give any feedback, positive, negative. It is helpful for me to know just how I can make this stronger, what you like, what you didn't like. But I'd love to spend some time in case people had specific questions. So everyone's perfectly sure.
sharing the slides?
Yes. Do you see another question here?
In the example you used earlier about, my mom's holding my case, blah, 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 if they say something like particularly provocative, like using the name calling or expletives, would you kind of go through your process of the feelings first before addressing that? How would you handle that? My mom's such a whatever.
A B or a,
For
yeah,
instance.
other letters. Yeah, I think if someone brings you something and you start by, for example, I didn't hear it, but let's say I heard a grammatical error in something you said. If I just corrected you, put you on the defensive, right? Instead of feeling like I'm hearing your question and really trying to respond to you, I start by what feels like criticism, even if with the intention to guide. And so if a child uses language that doesn't align with your values, doesn't align with the program values, I think that can be something that you tack on as a solution. So we start with the feelings. It's like you're really frustrated with her. Pause, let them kind of talk for a bit. And yeah, I hear that you're really frustrated. And with that language that you use, that doesn't help me hear that from you. I get too focused on the word you used instead of the message you're trying to share with me. And I wonder if other people lose your messages because of sometimes the words we choose. What words could we choose that would really focus on your message? Or maybe it's just a firm limit of, and that language is not appropriate for this room or this building. I also have my contact information in case you have further questions, specifics, something comes up in the future. Just, again, thank you guys all for what you do. Let me start there for end there. It really, really makes a difference. They say it takes one adult to make a difference in a child's life. I think we often think it has to be the parent, and research shows that it doesn't. It just needs to be a consistent, trustworthy adult who cares. So thank you for being that person for so many children. Thank you all.